Okay, the next principle that we have is called setting the design's rhythm. Unlike the two previous exercises or previous design principles that we discussed, this isn't so much about creating order out of chaos, although there is an element of creating order. This starts to get into a little bit more of the creativity. We can start to throw in a little bit of creative flair into our design. I want you to think of the design's rhythm or setting the design's rhythm as consistency throughout your layouts or repetition or setting a pattern inside the layout and running with it. Nothing inside your designs or inside your layouts should be arbitrary. Everything should have thought behind it, everything should have purpose. So what we want to do is we want to repeat some aspect of the design throughout the entire layout. Now, this could be a color, this could be perhaps an image or a font or some kind of an icon or a bullet point or a design element. I think you get the picture. But we want to repeat this stuff throughout the layout. And what this is going to do for our layout is it's going to pull everything together for us. It's going to tie the entire design together for us. Okay? So repetition or the design's rhythm is a conscious effort on our part, the designer's part, to pull the design together and unify the entire layout. Okay? So simply said, we're going to repeat visual elements inside the design. Let's take a look here. So what I'm looking at here is exactly where we had left off in the previous exercise. Okay, so nothing really has changed here. However, I've already started to set the rhythm inside the layout. And a lot of times you and I will do this naturally. We do this almost unconsciously. Here's what I'm talking about. The font that I used for the layout is the same font for all of the text. I didn't change the font at all inside the layout. Why? Well, I didn't see a reason to use a different font on some of the other text pieces inside the layout. I just stuck with the same font. So that's consistency throughout the entire layout. Here's something else. The font size, that would definitely count as an element inside the design's rhythm as well. I used the same font size throughout the entire layout. Why? It was unconscious on my part. I didn't see a reason why I should go and change it. You may as well ask me, why did I not set the telephone number to be orange? It didn't occur to me to set it to orange, and it didn't occur to me to use a different font or a different font size. So there's already consistency happening here. There's already rhythm happening here inside the design. We do it naturally, most of us anyway, on a subconscious level. But what could we do to this layout to introduce some additional rhythm to make it even more visually interesting to tie the entire design together? Well, what we could do is we could try introducing something new to the design. And again, as always, I'm using very, very simple examples here. So all I've done here is I took that top headline, "You're invited to John's surprise birthday," and I made it bold and I made it bigger. Okay, so I'm introducing something new inside the layout. Now, we have to be careful, though, when we do this, because if we don't do it enough, if we don't repeat this new element or this new technique enough inside the layout, it can look like a mistake. It can look like it's not supposed to be there. So let's take what we've done here and let's repeat it elsewhere inside the layout. So something like this, okay? Now, again, I'm keeping this really, really simple because I want to focus on the point of this exercise here, not creating amazing design, not yet anyway. So all I've done here is I took what I did to the headline, "You're invited to John's surprise birthday," and I just repeated it somewhere else inside the design. So obviously the telephone number, okay? And what this does instantly is this begins pulling the entire layout together. It's tying everything together and making the overall design look more uniform. And there's thought behind it. I did this on purpose. I had to consciously think of some kind of a change to make and then where I wanted to repeat that change. Okay? So again, there's intention behind all of this. All right. Now, here's another example for you. I'm going to slide over to the right. Here what I've done is I've introduced yet another design element. Here what I've done is I've simply introduced a very basic horizontal line or horizontal rule running right across the top area of my layout. But again, we've got to be careful here. Is this line supposed to be here? Does it look like a mistake? Does it look like it's just sort of arbitrarily thrown onto the page? Well, we know that nothing inside of our design should be arbitrary. So let's see if we can figure out a way to repeat this new design element, this simple horizontal line, somewhere else inside the document. We can easily use it somewhere else inside of our document or inside of our layout. And again, we're creating unity here. We're pulling everything together. All I did here is I just took that horizontal line that I had created earlier and I simply duplicated it somewhere else inside the layout. And that creates rhythm. That creates repetition and consistency inside of our design. Okay? All right. Now, I hope this is making sense. Here's another example for you. I'm going to slide over to the right one more time. I've pulled away that horizontal line because what I wanted to do is I wanted to start introducing color into my layout. So all I did here is I created a simple orange dot, almost like a bullet point, beside one of my text elements. Happens to be the date here. So I dropped in that dot. Now, here's what I like about this. It introduces color, and color obviously creates visual interest. But there's a big problem with this, and the problem is that it looks like a mistake. It looks like it's not supposed to be there. This is the only orange object inside the layout, and you and I might look at this, again, if someone handed this to us or if we pulled this out of our mailbox, we might even miss this orange dot the first time around. And then when we go back and look at it again, we go, hey, what's up with the orange dot? That's weird. Why is that sitting there? It's like it's not supposed to be there. Or, again, that it was almost just sort of arbitrarily thrown onto the page. So what we could do is we could take this design element that I've introduced and we could repeat it throughout the design to try and create some kind of consistency. Perhaps something like this, okay? So all I did here, and this is a terribly basic example, but all I did here is I took the idea of an orange circle and I just repeated it throughout the entire design. Okay? Now, I'm not saying that this looks fantastic. All I'm doing is driving home the point of taking this element that I've created, in this example an orange dot, and I've just repeated it throughout the entire layout. So at least it looks like it's supposed to be there. I'm not saying it looks amazing, but I'm simply making the point that it doesn't look like a mistake at this point. And what's interesting about this as well, in the case of a small invitation for a birthday party, is the orange dot to me starts to imply perhaps birthday balloons or something like that, tying together the overall message of the, or purpose, I suppose you could say, of the layout, of the design. But is there a better way to imply that it's a party or imply, something related to parties, perhaps balloons or confetti or something like that, and also introduce color? Sure, here's a better example for you. Give me a second here. I'll slide over to the right. Here we go, something like this. So now I've introduced this design element down towards the bottom left corner, sort of these little triangles. And these little triangles, to me anyway, would imply perhaps party poppers or confetti or, some kind of a party event, right? But because this is the only occurrence of these little party favor confetti thingamajiggies, whatever you want to call them, again, it doesn't look like it's supposed to be there. It looks like it's a mistake. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to take what I've created here and I'm just going to repeat it somewhere else inside the layout like so. And this achieves the introduction of color into our layout, which is wonderful, adding that visual interest. It ties the entire layout together by using this principle of rhythm and consistency, and it's also implying, again, party poppers or party favors or confetti, something like that. So there you go. I hope that makes sense. Now here's another example for you, a larger, more full-page layout. Or in a multi-page document, think of like a textbook or some kind of a technical manual, perhaps something like this. This idea of setting the design's rhythm is really simply referred to as creating consistency or keeping or maintaining consistency throughout the entire document. And the purpose is to unify the entire design, the entire layout, and create a little bit of subtle visual interest. So what I've created here is what I would call complete chaos. There's a variety of colors going on. There's at least 3 or 4 fonts going on. It's a mess. And again, it's this idea of just kind of arbitrarily setting stuff inside the layout and hoping that it's all going to look decent. It's all going to come together kind of magically inside the software for me. And again, we have to have intention behind all of this. We have to have a plan. We have to have purpose behind all of the design decisions that you and I make. So here's what I've done. I've taken what we have here and I'm going to find something that's kind of working for me, and I'm going to grab it and I'm going to run with it and I'm going to push it further. Specifically, the headline for the layout and once again, this simple horizontal rule. So I'm going to take those two elements and I'm simply going to push them further. So I've taken the exact same content and I've simply dressed it up in a consistent fashion. So I'm repeating the font that I used in the headline for the subheadings, and I took the horizontal rule that I had used across the top and I simply repeated that once again, as we saw earlier, across the bottom. That's it. The only other change that I made is I took the, let's call it the body font that was being used earlier, which was Times New Roman, and I changed it to a simpler font, which was Arial, I believe, in this example. So once again, all I did is I found something that was sort of working inside the layout, and I grabbed it and I ran with it. That's it. Okay, so to summarize here, most of us have some kind of consistency when we're creating documents, when we're laying things out. We naturally start to group things together and try to create some semblance of order. What I'm suggesting is to take this natural ability and be aware of it, be conscious of it, and push it further and create a little bit more visual interest with it as well. I want to stress, though, that we don't want to overwhelm our viewer with too much repetition. We want to try and keep things simple. Think back to the last example of the party invitation that I had. 2 simple party poppers. That was it. I could have overwhelmed the entire layout with balloons and party poppers and more color and color on the text and a million other things, and that would have been overwhelming. Okay, so we don't want to use too much repetition. You know what? Think of branding. Think of Coca-Cola Red, or think of Nike, for example, or some other brands that you're familiar with. A lot of times we know that we're looking at a Coca-Cola ad, or we know that we're looking at a Coca-Cola flyer because of the consistency that they use throughout all of their branding. So be aware of it and look around for examples of it in your everyday life.